And here we go with the link online. And yes, here we are once again, and we're live on Facebook and, of course, also on our website. And we have with us once again the full regular team. We have Lynn Desjardins.
Hello there.
And Levon Savant's in black today.
Black today was my CBC T-shirt from the 75th anniversary.
When was that?
Oh, this was way back.
Way back?
Way back?
Way back? Okay.
This is a collector's item now.
It's a collector. Well, so are you. There you go. But you're not even 75. All right, moving right on keyboards, we have with us once again, back from a trip to the east, Marie-Claude Simard.
Hi, everybody.
All right, and of course, in the control room, our regular controller, Chantal Saint-Sauveur, with a big smile and a big wave. We really have to get the camera in.
We can see her a little bit in the window here, yeah.
Can we see her? Cool. Oh, okay. All right.
Cool.
Okay, we can see you, so give a little wave. There. Hiding in the background, controlling the controller, is Pierre Dutil. Also waving and smiling. All right. Well, anyway, let's get back to the show here. And coming up on the show in this half hour, we have Lynn.
I'll tell you about how the Canada jay got its name back and how the bird typifies the true nature of Canadians.
Levon.
Well, I'll speak with a Canadian expert about Canada's and Denmark's efforts to resolve their long-running dispute in the Arctic, or disputes, actually. It's more than one.
Marie-Claude.
I'll talk to you about lobster fishing and lobster tasting in New Brunswick.
Unfortunately, however, she couldn't bring some of that back with her from the trip. All right, I'll have another political story as well. It's about an international affairs expert speaking on the U.S. decision to pull out of that deal on Iran's nuclear weapons program. Those are some of the stories coming up on this half hour of The Link Online. All right, Levon, we're going to start out with your story about the island in the middle of basically nowhere, I guess. This is a Canadian and Danish dispute. The officials have been announcing that they've actually created a joint task force to get together, and along with the government of Greenland, of course, to resolve this outstanding boundary dispute in the Arctic.
Well, there is more than one, but the one that really is catching everybody's attention and has received a lot of media attention is this tiny island called Hans Island in the middle of the Kennedy Channel. That's between Greenland and Canada's Ellesmere Island. And it's been dubbed the world's most civilized conflict. And here's the way it unfolds. So every few years or so, Danish warships sails up the Kennedy Channel. There's a team of Danish sailors who disembark on this tiny island. They go up to the highest point on the island. There's a flagpole there. They take out a Canadian flag, carefully fold it, put up a Danish flag, then go. There is a little cairn next to it. They write a note claiming the island for Denmark, put a bottle or two of Danish schnapps in it, and leave.
How nice.
The next year, a Canadian team of soldiers flies in on a helicopter, goes to the flagpole, puts down the Danish flag, carefully folds it, puts up a Canadian flag, puts a note claiming the island for Canada, and then leaves a bottle or two of Canadian Club whiskey.
Yes, Canadian Club. Yes.
So, and of course, I mean, this has caught the attention of the media, and there are these diplomatic notes flying between Ottawa and Copenhagen. So now the two countries have decided to resolve this dispute, and there's two other smaller disputes that are not really disputes. So I asked Michael Byers to explain this all to me, and he's one of the most preeminent experts on international law in the Arctic, and he's Canada Chair in Global Politics in International Law at the University of British Columbia.
So Hans Island is a tiny rock in the middle of Nares Strait between Greenland and Canada's Ellesmere Island. The entire island is just 1.3 square kilometers. And it happens to sit right on the maritime boundary between the two countries. And we've known about this dispute since 1973, when Canada and Denmark agreed on the maritime boundary in that location. It's not a dispute of any importance. It does not concern the water or the seabed. It only concerns this tiny rock. Mm-hmm. But it's attracted a lot of media attention over the years, just because of the fact that it has a certain symbolism, being an Arctic sovereignty dispute, and being the only Arctic dispute over land as opposed to water and seabed. But it's easy to resolve. The simplest option would be to simply draw a line down the middle, and that would be simply a question of connecting the maritime boundary on the south side with the maritime boundary on the north side. The second dispute in the Lincoln Sea was generated by Canada and Denmark using slightly different, what are called base points, slightly different locations on the coastline of Greenland and Ellesmere Island to draw what's called an equidistance line out into the ocean, a line that is an equal distance from the coastlines on either side as it progresses outwards into the open ocean. So it was a disagreement concerning whether or not you could count a small island as a base point on the Greenland side. And that's all been resolved because Denmark modified its method some 6 or 7 years ago. So it's a dispute without a difference now, and would be ridiculously easy to resolve.
And that was an excerpt of my conversation with Michael Byers. He's an expert on international law in the Arctic and Canada Research Chair in Global Politics and International Law at the University of British Columbia. And if you're interested in these Arctic sovereignty issues, I would strongly suggest you get your hands on 2 books written by Mr. Byers. The latest one is called International Law in the Arctic, and his first book, it was called Who Owns the Arctic? And he explains all these issues very well. You don't have to be a lawyer to understand these books.
I thought it was ours. The Arctic is ours. It should be. It should be ours. That settles it. All right, we're going to have a little word about the official Canadian bird. Well, the Canada jay got renamed in 1957, and Canadian birders say that should have never happened. After some intense lobbying, the American Ornithological Society has decided to restore the name, and that's a good thing for many reasons, according to Canadian birders, and we've done several stories on what was for years called the gray jay, and Lynn, you have the latest developments.
Yes, a very intense story, and some very happy ornithologists in Canada right now, but they are not stopping in their campaign. They've been working very hard to try to get the Canadian government to declare the Canada jay the national bird. There is no national bird for Canada now, although the Royal Canadian Geographical Society held its own contest to get people to choose the best candidate. So for more on this and all the efforts on behalf of this little bird, I spoke with David Byrd. Yes, that is his name. He is a professor emeritus of biology at McGill University and a great bird expert. He began by telling me that the name Canada jay is perfect for several reasons.
It perfectly typifies the Canadian personality. It's an extremely friendly bird. It'll land on your head, your camera lens, on your hand without even being prompted by food, and they're very trusting. They're extremely hardy. They don't migrate in the wintertime like most birds do, including the common loon. They stay year-round, and they actually breed at temperatures sometimes at minus 30 degrees. And thirdly, they're a member of the corvid family. That's the crows, the magpies, the jays, and the ravens, which makes them basically part of the smartest birds on the planet. So you've got smart, you've got friendly, and you've got hardy. That's Canadian.
This bird was originally called the Canada jay. What happened?
Well, a gentleman named Dan Strickland, he's an ornithologist from Ontario who is arguably the top Canada Jay expert, and he doggedly pursued research to look into why the name was changed and spent hours in archives in Washington, D.C., and he came up with a very strong argument for why this bird's name, Canada Jay, should be restored. And he spearheaded the proposal with several of us on board to the committee that decides the names of birds. And we just found out a few days ago that they've agreed to the change, and that's not something they do every day. And so the bird's going to get its old name back in July.
What are the implications of that?
Well, we're kind of hoping that it might provide some impetus for our federal government to get on board with the choice and actually ratify it officially. The point is that there was a contest held, and the Canada Jay, under the name Grey Jay, did win the contest, but unfortunately, there were two birds ahead of it. The common loon had the most votes, and the snowy owl, but those birds are already taken by the provinces of Ontario and Quebec, respectively. And so in 1965, when we chose a new flag for Canada, we didn't elevate one of the provincial flags. We chose something fresh and new, and we believe that Canada deserves something fresh and new as a national bird. We have a beaver as our national mammal. We have the maple tree as our national tree. It's time to have a national bird, and this is the best year to do it because this is the year of the bird. It's a huge celebration. In August, there's going to be thousands of ornithologists and bird lovers from all over the world converging on Vancouver for the International Ornithological Congress and the very first Vancouver International Bird Festival. And what a perfect time for the federal government to at least announce its intention of creating a national bird, and the Canada Jay should be that bird.
Have you heard back from the government on this?
Oh, not yet. They've got their hands full with a lot of really other important issues right now. But I'm thinking that Canada, we need some good news, something sort of a little bit lighter to digest. And I think announcing the creation of a national bird for Canada would make a lot of people very happy.
So there you go, David Byrd telling us that the campaign is going to continue. They're asking that all Canadians get behind the effort. And I just, asked him whether ordinary Canadians can get to see the Canada Jay, and apparently they only go into your backyard probably in the easternmost provinces, the maritime provinces near the Atlantic. For the rest of us, we would actually have to travel a bit of a ways north unless you live in the boreal forest, because that's where their normal habitat is. And he says, it's a great excuse. Everybody should be visiting the boreal forest anyway, so if, want to go see a Canada Jay, there you go.
Have you ever seen one?
I think I have, but I wasn't sure. I was cross-country skiing once in the backwoods, and these birds were just coming right down and wanted to have lunch with us. So we're all sitting around, and we were amazed at how friendly they were. Have you seen one?
I've seen lots of blue jays and, of course, lots of loons,
Yes.
but I don't think I've seen a Grey Jay or a Canada Jay.
Same here. I don't think I've ever seen a Canada Jay.
Well, maybe we should just all go and do a remote program from the boreal forest somewhere. Once the mosquitoes die down.
I think
August, September.
But I like the fact that they are so Canadian. They are friendly. They are robust and hardy.
Yes, and they mate in sub-zero temperatures.
I wasn't going to mention that part. But there you go. And here we go. We have lots more to come up. Your letters are coming up next. Right. In fact, it's a hangover from the old days when we used to get physical letters. These are actually comments posted to our story, so they're not actually letters, but they still are your thoughts. And if you want to post your thoughts to any of the stories on our website, you just scroll down to the very bottom of each story page, and the form for submission is there, and you can read some of the comments other people have written. Now, to start us off this time around, we have, we're just going to have a few comments this week, and starting us off, we have a story from earlier this year about the record library here at the public broadcaster in Montreal being closed down and the music being converted to electronic files before being disposed of, either going to museums or recycled. And we had an emotional response from a former employee, Edie Woke.
As mentioned in the article, there are many rarities to be found among the collection of vinyl and 78 RPM discs. I worked at MRC, that's the building here in Montreal, between 1980 and 1990 and spent many hours browsing through the stacks of discs in the basement of the library, often spending my lunch hour listening to records in one of the listening rooms. Sadly, the CBC is another federally funded institution that has little regard for its heritage and archival holdings. Montreal is just the latest CBC facility to do away with the record library and its contents. What will be left is memories not only of records, CDs, sheet music, but also the employees who cataloged, maintained, and shared my passion for recorded music.
All right. Our next comment goes back to a story from 2016 about a special $2 Canadian coin being struck to commemorate the Battle of the Atlantic 75 years ago, now 77 years ago. Brad came across the story this week and asked this question.
Just wondering, could the market value of this toonie from a collector's standpoint?
I don't think they'd be worth very much, other than a couple of bucks face value, because when they're a collector's coin, when you say it's a collector's coin, people tend to collect them, and so there's a lot of them sort of hanging around. I don't think I've seen a
You can probably still get them in those Canada Post
stores,
collector kind of items.
Possibly, yeah. But I don't think I've ever seen one in circulation, though. I still see the polar bears on our toonies.
Yes.
$2 coins.
Yep.
All right, we had some back and forth on a story about new Canadian rules coming for people flying personal drones, and Chad F. quoted from the story.
Drone flying courses are expected to see a big increase in students as the new regulation comes into effect. I guess that was our headline. And he comments, no, they won't. 250 gram restricts flying in cities to cheap plastic toys. Try explaining these laws to my kid, who, even at 11, can't understand why. Just because his toy is too heavy, he can't even fly it around the backyard below treetop height.
Well, Eric F. responded to that.
I couldn't agree with you more. These laws are making it almost a crime to fly one unless you have your own acreage to fly it around in. I think proposed drone zones within city parks would be a great idea so recreational drone racers don't have to drive an hour out of town to the middle of nowhere to practice flying around.
Well, then Dave K. posted an opposing view.
Sorry, guys, have to disagree. For every 11-year-old flying his plastic toy drone in his backyard, there would be 3 teenagers at the local park flying a DJ-1 Spark 300 grams in sport mode, 30 kilometers per hour. Laws aren't made for conscientious people. Yes, I own a drone. Yes, I'm taking an expensive course to become a licensed drone pilot. And yes, I think the laws are reasonable.
I have someone in my neighborhood flying a drone in our neighborhood park, and it's the flight path towards the Trudeau airport. And every time I see this drone, I'm thinking, what happens if that drone gets a bit higher? And it's literally on the flight path of the plane.
That is currently illegal, because you're not allowed, under the current laws, you're not allowed to fly a drone anywhere within a 5.5 kilometer radius of an airport. So, which is what a lot of people are complaining about, because there are a lot of airports in towns making like in Toronto, for example, there are so many airports and heliports that you can't theoretically fly a drone for recreational purposes anywhere in the whole city of Toronto. So anyway, all right. So finally, we're gonna end off. Keep our letter short this time around. And we had another story recently about vehicle license plates being offered in Nova Scotia in Gaelic. And Douglas McNabb wrote this.
I heard about the new Gaelic license plates, and I have one on my car now. Great idea. It was darn time they were available.
There you go. All right, we'll end it there for this week. We have lots more to come on the program. Just to remind you again, you can post your comments to each story. And you can just go down to the bottom of each page. And as I said before, the form is there. You can post your comments, your thoughts, and you can read those of others. Now, coming up, totally, we have a political story coming up. And then after that, totally unrelated, we have a lobster story. Well, in what has been labeled a controversial move, the United States has said it's pulling out of an internationally negotiated deal to end Iran's nuclear weapons program. And using diplomatic terms, many international leaders, especially those involved in the deal, the 5 Security Council members plus Germany and the EU, have chided President Trump for his decision. Iran is now facing U.S. sanctions and says it is willing to talk with the remaining partners, but time is short and it may decide to restart enriching uranium. Canada's Justin Trudeau has also expressed dismay at the U.S. decision, but Canadian international affairs expert Ferry de Kerkhove says Canada's opinion really carries no weight in this discussion or in the U.S. decision, which he says is a very counterproductive move. Now, he is a senior fellow at the University of Ottawa Graduate School of Public and International Affairs, and in this excerpt, he begins with some background to the international agreement.
Well, the background, for years there has been some concern in the West about the so-called nuclear ambitions of Iran, and in fact around 2003 it was established through in part Canadian intelligence that indeed Iran was pursuing a nuclear weapon. And I think that fact is very important to remember within the context of the recent decision by the American presidency. So there's been various attempts until finally under President Obama there was this remarkable, unique in history coalition of more than 60 countries that decided together to impose so stiff sanctions on the Iranian regime that eventually it actually came to negotiation, and that's when we got the negotiation in 2014-15 and the implementation of this very important joint common program of action, which is fundamentally a treaty decided by the 5 permanent members of the Security Council, plus Germany, plus the European Union.
But we had the former Prime Minister of Canada expressing some reserves. We have obviously Israel and Saudi Arabia also not liking this deal at all. One of the things that they're concerned about is that there had to be 24 days notice before an inspection. And people are saying, well, that gives somebody lots of time to hide things and move things around, kind of thing. Isn't
well,
that?
You know, it's very intriguing because the kind of surveillance that is taking place, any kind of movement of any sort would be easily detected by remote sensing in space. So I think if you want to start a new nuclear program in Iran, it is going to be detected.
Wasn't one of the other concerns was that this didn't actually end the Iranian potentially nuclear weapons program, but merely delayed it for another 15 years or something?
Well, here again, I don't deny that they could resume some of the research, some of the centrifuge, some of that, but there is a fundamental commitment by Iran never to produce a nuclear weapon.
Now, as I mentioned before, Canada's former Prime Minister expressed reservations about this deal. The current Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, says it's a good deal and he'd like to see it go on. Canada has nuclear capability in that sense. We certainly don't have any nuclear weapons or weapons program. But how important is Canada's voice in this? Do we even matter at all?
Okay, there's 2 questions there. First of all, do we matter in this day and age? I think the lightness of being makes us not very relevant on the international stage. But the point is that Canada's Mr. Harper expressing concern was nothing new. He did express it at the time of the GCPOA, but, since we didn't really matter and we were not part of negotiation, we expressed reservation because we would like to have it more stringent, and that's fine. While Mr. Trudeau, I don't think he knows much about the GCPOA, but he knows that there are 5 countries of significance plus 1 who initially went through an extensive negotiation, and therefore it's absolutely normal for our Prime Minister today to say he regrets what is being done. But he does it in such a moot way so that not to irritate his buddy in the South, that it doesn't really matter much.
And that was Ferry de Kerkhove, a senior fellow at the University of Ottawa Graduate School of Public and International Affairs. And in the full interview, of course, is available in the highlights section of our website. Very interesting conversation with Mr. Ferry de Kerkhove. Well, we're going to move on right now and get away from all this political mumbo-jumbo and international conflicts and so on, whether it be Hans Island or Iranian nuclear deals. And we're going to go to the east coast of New Brunswick, where Marie-Claude was spending last week while we were here in studio. Marie-Claude, what were you doing down there?
Yes. Well, I went to visit friends, but also... Wait a minute. Okay, I'm going to transfer the picture so people can see.
Well, who is this guy?
Yeah, let me transfer it. Okay, this is Steve, and I went to see him because he has a restaurant called La Terrasse à Steve. And also, what's very interesting about Steve is that on top of being a restaurant owner and a cook, he's also a lobster buyer. So right next to his restaurant, there's all those little fishing boats coming all day long and dropping tons. Well, not tons, but lots of lobsters. So, well, I would first like to show you where exactly we were. So this is Canada, and New Brunswick is in red, and a bit closer, we see that little on top there's a peninsula. That's the Acadian Peninsula, and I was on the island of Miscou. So it's a little island there. It's I wasn't aware of that place, but it's a lovely little island. So here is a little selection of pictures of at Steve's place. So as you can see, Steve loves lobsters. He has one tattooed on his elbow. I mean, shoulder.
Those are old-fashioned lobster pots there, though.
Yeah, but those are not the real ones. Now, this is going really fast, so let me just slow down a little bit here. Oops, wrong one.
Those are definitely not lobsters.
This is what happens when you talk and try to coordinate everything. Okay, so this is his shack, and actually, he wanted to call it the Lobster Shack, but everybody calls it La Terrasse à Steve. So here are the boats. I don't know much about lobster fishing, but I'm amazed at the amount of lobster he gets. Like in all those boxes there's 100 lobster. Mm-hmm. And each boat has like 12 boxes like that, and he gets like 9 boats a day. So it's every day Steve receives like 17,000 lobsters. Wow. So he sells most of them, and he's going to put lots of them in he has 20 swimming pools. Look at this one.
It's blue.
Yes, there was one like that when I got there, and the chances of having a blue lobsters is 1 in 4 million. So that was pretty amazing of an event.
Is that a sign of good luck or something?
I don't know anything.
Not for the lobster.
No, and I guess nobody knows what they taste because
can you eat them, or nobody eats them?
Well, nobody seems to eat them. They either send them to the aquarium, or Steve keeps it so as tourists, the clients can take pictures of it. So the lobster season ends at the end of June, but he keeps lobsters. Wait a minute. This is the recipe he showed me. It's called lobster casserole with the secret sauce. So, of course, he didn't tell me all the ingredients of the secret sauce. He told me
Did you taste it?
Yes, I tasted it. No, the walls of his restaurant are...
So is that Miscou Island there?
Yes.
Okay.
How did you get there?
By boat.
Well, I drove, and now there's a bridge.
Oh.
Steve's father used to be the owner of the ferry when there was no bridge. So now most people that live there are fishermen, but he tried to be a fisherman, but he could never get over the seasickness. So he decided to be a buyer. He knows all the fishermen there, and he owns the store.
Is it still French speaking there?
Yes, I loved to discover the Acadian Peninsula. And, it's mostly French in that area, and they're very proud of it, but very humble, too, about it. So,
well, we have these wonderful pictures there. We just have enough time to squeeze in a lovely picture from one of Lynn's stories.
Great!
Oh, yes, I posted a blog.
Here we go.
Yes, these 2 snow leopard cubs were born at a zoo in the western province of Manitoba at the Assiniboine Zoo, and they were born 2 weeks ago. They were pronounced in excellent health, and people should be able to see them sometime this summer.
All right, that's all the time we have for the show for today. So for Lynn and Levon and Marie-Claude and Chantal in the studio, I'm still Mark Montgomery, and we'll see you next week.
Over here.
What? Oh, okay. Well, That one. Okay. That's almost all the time we have for the show for today. I just want to remind you, coming up on the weekend, this weekend, we have your special report on
yes, on a young man who, with aphasia, with difficulty speaking, who had to go to court and testify. He had a criminal charge against him, and it was terrible. He was trying to get help so that he could speak to the court and testify. Gotta go see it. We'll be posting it, I guess, at midnight.
Saturday. Yep.
midnight
Saturday.
tonight. So that's one of our long formats. And last week we had the one about the making of service dogs. And I guess in a couple of weeks we're going to have yours.
Yes, about this very controversial Ukrainian monument, and there's actually 3, but very, very controversial story.
All right. And also next week we're going to be on location at the Salon de l'Immigration, the immigration job fair here in Montreal. So join us next week for that. Until then,
Thursday.
On Thursday. Well, all right. Take care until next time. Which camera here? Which camera?
Bye.
We're gone.